Hi, Ron LeGrand here. Before we get started with the podcast, I thought you might want to know that I recently recorded a 90-minute online training about how we make so much money today in the terms business. That's on pretty houses in pretty neighborhoods, not the junk houses that we have to go rehab or wholesale. I go through step by step on exactly what I and thousands of my students are doing right now to make the fastest and the easiest money in real estate without using your money or credit. If you're interested in doing just that, go to thementorpodcast.com/free training. See you there.
Welcome to the Mentor Podcast, where the most highly motivated entrepreneurs come to get their weekly dose of financial stability with host Ron LeGrand, as well as other nationally recognized thought leaders who will teach you how to get, grow, and protect your wealth.
Hey there, everyone, and welcome to another edition of thementorpodcast.com. I recently did an interview with a couple of very special guys you might recognize from TV. And I'd like to share that with you on this podcast. So, guys, we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
But I want to first start with your stories, because you guys are some people actually think you're partners. I mean, in business, okay? And well, of course, some people think whatever they want to think, but you both got a very interesting story. So I want you to go back to your beginnings, what it was like before you even met, and then how you got where you're at and how you got on this show. And then I want to talk about this show. I want to get behind the scenes on these reality shows on TV. All right.
I think it might be a good idea to have Jamil and myself share maybe where our first deals came from and okay, how we jumped into the business. Cause you had a bunch of people ask earlier, how do I find subject to and seller finance deals? And you go, well, that's not really what you're hunting for. So why don't we start there? And then we kind of explain how Jamil and my worlds converged at one point, and we got a TV show out of it.
Perfect.
Nice to see you, Ron. Always
you
a pleasure.
Too, sir.
You're getting handsomer and handsomer every day.
Yeah, and you get full of crap more every day, too.
Oh, man. I appreciate being here this morning. Thank you again to you and your team for having us. As Pace had said earlier, I couldn't have said it any better. You're a legend to us. We absolutely adore you, and we're honored that you allowed us to be with you here today. And good morning to everybody that's watching. My name is Jamil Damji. If you aren't familiar with me, I am based out of Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a 43-year-old man in real estate. I've been in the business for 20 years, started when I was 23 years old, and I started on accident. My life wasn't meant to be an entrepreneur at jump. My parents were very heavily pushing me towards becoming a medical doctor. I'm East Indian of descent, and that's just what we do. My parents were both immigrants. I'm first generation born in the United States, and my parents worked very hard. They worked hard every day, and I watched them toil. And for me, I wanted to do anything I could to have a financial future that wasn't the same as what my parents had. Now, I didn't end up getting into medical school, and that was my first heartbreak. But what I learned in that heartbreak was putting my destiny in the hands of another human being that doesn't know me is a fool's job. You will absolutely never get to where you want to get to in your life if other people are deciding for you. And so my first decision, my first deal, if we want to call it that, was with myself. My first deal was, Jamil, I'm actually going to get up in the morning and I'm going to pave my path. I'm going to be the master of my own destiny. And I got into entrepreneurship. My first role in entrepreneurship wasn't real estate related. I was in a fledgling enterprise at the time, and it was a media company. What I was doing is I was calling business owners out of the yellow pages, and I was convincing them that this thing called the internet was a real thing, and they should move their advertising from the yellow pages to a website. And I would cold call people. I did really well at that, sold hundreds of websites. But like many new entrepreneurs, I didn't really understand the business. I didn't understand what my costs were. And so every time I would sell a $600 website, I would actually lose $100 because it cost us $700 to make these things. And so I
make it up in volume, huh, Jamil?
Yep, absolutely. And so I'm digging myself into this deep hole of debt. However, I'm putting myself in proximity to people that are making moves, doing things. And my business partner at the time, him and his father were in real estate, and they were in small developments. They were taking these old houses that were on double lots, and they were bulldozing them and then building up duplexes and making a fortune. And as I'm walking by my business partner's office, I'm hearing a conversation him and his father are having about a deal that they just completed where they made $160,000. And for a guy who's losing money every time he makes a sale, every time I get a win, I'm losing. I interjected myself into that conversation, and I asked how I could get involved. And like many people who are in traditional real estate, they didn't see an opportunity for me. They didn't see how I fit in because I didn't have any cash. I didn't have good credit. I wasn't a licensed real estate agent. And so they very quickly told me, Jamil, you have nothing to do in this conversation. I mean, we really can't help you. But as I further listened and eavesdropped, I heard them lamenting about not having enough building lots, not having enough homes, raw materials to go and build these duplexes. And so I interjected into the conversation again. I said, well, if you don't have enough of something, is there a way that I can help you find that? And immediately they both said, well, yeah, if you know anybody who's selling a house on a 50 by 120 foot lot that's zoned R2, we'll buy it. The next day, I'm walking my dog and I'm walking by a house that's for rent. I had actually tried to rent the house 3 months earlier, but the price of the rent per month was about $300 more than I could afford. That's where my life was. $300 was going to make or break where I lived. And I called the sign because it was still for rent. And I asked the lady if she would consider selling the house instead of renting the house. You know, months had passed and the house is still available. Her answer was, I sure would if the price was right. And I asked what that number was. And she said, I'll take $350 for the house. Well, now I know that I've got a seller at $350,000. And I run my butt back to the office and have a conversation with my partner. And I asked him how much him and his dad would pay for this house. And immediately, $400,000 was the number that came off their minds. So now I have a $50,000 problem. You know, most people would look at that and say, well, why don't I just connect the dots and ask for a finder's fee? But for me, I was trying to figure out how I could become the principal in the deal. And I did what I knew how to do. So I got back to the Yellow Pages and I started cold calling lawyers. And I got all the way to the letter S in the lawyers section because no lawyers would talk to me. Their secretaries and their gatekeepers would just shoo me away. But this one lawyer was so fresh out of law school that he didn't have a secretary yet. So he answers his own phone. His name is David Steed. I will never forget him because he changed my life. He introduced me to the concept of being able to trade a contract, selling a contract, trading my interest in a contract. And he laid it out for me. He said, Jamil, what you need is a purchase contract. You need to go and put this lady under contract and make sure that in your buyer name, you write your name and or assignee. And then you need another contract where you sell that property to whatever buyer you've got. And then you bring those two contracts to me. And once I do all the title work and I make sure that I pay off any liens or mortgages, I'll have a check for you. And sure enough, a few days later, after everything was done, I had $47,000 in change after the lawyer took his fee. And for me, that was a life-changing experience because
sure.
When I grew up in a very limited means. My parents didn't teach me any of these things. I thought I invented this business model, right? But obviously, men like Ron LeGrand had been paving the way for many of us. And I wish I had known about you. I wish I'd had an understanding of the high level education that was available. I did this deal in Canada, and your commercials or your marketing would have never even reached me there. And I'm looking at this.
20 years ago, they would have. Yeah.
You would have?
Yeah.
Well, I wish I was paying attention because I probably would have accelerated my life a lot quicker. But I'll tell you what, that one deal, Ron, it changed everything about the way I operated.
It usually does for everybody that comes into the business. Mine was only $3,000. Yeah. But it changed everything. Okay, so you got you really started from scratch, didn't you? I mean, I had no idea whatsoever. All right, so Pace, what's your background here? You a totally different background. Totally
different background. I grew up in a blue collar family, and my dad was a contractor, is a contractor. I learned to make all my money from using my hands, not my mouth and not my brain.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. And so all the way through my 20s, I did what I was taught. You know, I learned from my parents how to work my guts out and love it. And
work hard, put in the hours, be a good citizen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pay your taxes.
Yeah, pay your taxes.
And so I ended up getting to a point where I was doing about $25 million a year as a contractor for other people's renovations. And I ended up getting a contract with Open Door, OfferPad, Zillow, and I was doing a lot of their turns and their big renovations all over the country in multiple different states. And I ended up doing 7,000 renovations for other people before I ever took a chance on myself.
Hey, Christmas.
I never believed I could do it, Ron. I never believed I could do it. And the funny thing is, finally somebody came to me and told me, why aren't you in real estate? Why aren't you in real estate? And I go, I am in real estate. I'm doing all these turns and these fix and flips. And they go, no. You're not in real estate. You're a service provider for the people who are in real estate. And that moment just rattled me. And I had 250 employees doing a lot of business, working 100+ hours a week. I was earning a living, but I wasn't becoming wealthy. So I've
said that before.
Oh, yeah. So I started poking around. Somebody directed me in the right direction, and I ended up sending out a slew of postcards to people who had pain points, right? Just like what you talked about earlier before you started interviewing us, is that you go find sellers who are in distress, right? Jay Cutler, I think you guys have, or Jay Connor, I'm sorry. Jay Connor has a lead that is right there on your desk that's a foreclosure.
Yeah.
Right? So we start looking at foreclosures, we start looking at high equity, we start looking at probate, we start looking at all these things, and I send out my first set of mail. I ended up getting my first contract. I made $25,000 in probably about 7 hours of total work.
Yeah. And what year was that?
This was 2016. No, I'm sorry, 2015. So 7 years ago.
15. Yeah. So you've only been in this industry for 7 years?
Only 7 years.
7 years. Wow. Okay.
And, it is crazy what happened when I got that first $25,000 check. I said, man, I essentially, here's the problem with being blue collar, is that if I made $25,000 on a construction job, that money went to insurance, workman's comp, half of it went to taxes. And I'm like, man, I ended up netting $8,000 on a $25,000 profit.
And worked your butt off.
And worked my butt off and dealt with customers, and somebody else controlled my fate. And so from that moment, I made a decision. I'm going to unravel my construction business and go full-time in real estate the second I saw that it was real. And
that had to have been a big decision.
It was a big decision.
That one probably cost you a little sleep, didn't it?
It took a year. I mean, most people look at that and they say, why didn't you just turn that off overnight? I'm like, are you kidding me? It's all I knew for my whole life.
I'm not sure most people were capable of making that decision.
No. And again, it took me 7,000 renovations for other people before I ever took a chance on myself.
That's hard to imagine. So, can you renovate a house today? Okay, you don't need there's outside advice.
Nobody I've met on the planet that knows more about houses than I do. And at the time, I thought it was a superpower, and it, to some degree it is, but really it held me back. And my prior education, my parents, I tell people all the time, I had the strongest engine, right? My desire, my heart, my urgency. I wanted to accomplish something, but my engine that I had was in the wrong vehicle. Yeah. And it can only go so fast, so far. And then on top of it, the vehicle I was in, I felt like somebody else had control of the wheel the whole time.
Which they did.
And so jumped into real estate, and very quickly, what I do now in real estate is we do a little bit of everything, because we go after motivated sellers, and as that motivated seller lead comes into our pipeline, we make a determination. Is that a fix and flip for us in our own backyard? Is that a subject to deal we want to hold as a rental or a short-term deal? Is that a seller finance deal? Is that an apartment deal? We just did our first $100 million acquisition last week. Yeah, 440 units in North Carolina. I am beyond delighted to think that I didn't believe in myself, and we just raised $51 million in equity to go and take down a behemoth 9-figure purchase that I now hold in my portfolio. It was just who I was learning from was the biggest difference. It was the biggest difference. And so at the beginning of this interview, I wanted to make sure we gave you that moment, because Ron, you do not get enough praise for how hard you work and your team and what you guys put into changing people's lives, because it was somebody just like you that said, here's the right way. Here's the correct way to go. And the person was not as convincing as you, but they were convincing enough to get me to take action and do the things. And so,
well, you mentioned the word is the team. Frankly, right. I just show up and smile and talk and do what I do. They're doing everything else. And like right now, there's a team putting this together. And without that team, we wouldn't even be here today. And the same as with you. I remember your big team. So today you still buy houses, right?
Yep, we buy a lot of houses. I have close to 700 doors now under in our portfolio.
Okay, but that includes the apartments.
Yep. So I've got 250 single family homes. Yeah.
No kidding. All right, how old are you?
39.
Oh my God! It should be illegal to be where you're at 39 years. I didn't even start till I was 35, for crying out loud.
Right.
So, man, well, you've accomplished a lot. So I want to know, you guys. I want to know how you met first. That's an interesting story in itself.
Well, here's a great story. So as a contractor working for other people, what I thought was a really great marketing strategy was to go to fix and flippers. And you're probably going to cringe when you hear this, Ron.
Oh, I've heard it all before.
I would go to fix and flippers and I would say, hey, how about you let me fund all your construction, and then you pay me when you find your buyer, and your buyer pays off, buys the house from you. And then I can get paid there. Well, I got into a really bad situation doing this where somebody in Phoenix had owed me a lot of money. And the only person I knew that had ever done business with this nefarious character was Jamil. And I'd never met Jamil. I just knew that he had done a couple of deals with this guy. And I was like, I need to get some insight on how to handle this human being, because he is what he is. So I reach out to Jamil on Instagram. Thank goodness for social media. I reach out to him on Instagram and I go, hey, I need some help. I need some advice. I hear you're just like this godly figure in wholesale in Arizona. I need your help. I'm doing construction for this guy. He owes me hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's climbing every single day. So we sit down, and very long story short, Jamil says, this guy's running a Ponzi scheme on you. Here's the proof. And he showed me not bank records, but public data showing that this guy was adding seconds, thirds, fourths to every single one of his houses. And he was running a Ponzi scheme, just robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I was Peter and I was Paul. Mm-hmm. And I didn't run away. And Jamil kept telling me, run away, run away. Instead, Ron, I dug myself deeper in a hole, and I ended up losing over $1 million the day that this guy filed bankruptcy. He sent me a bankruptcy letter the day my daughter was born.
Oh my God.
And he filed bankruptcy on $1 million to me and about $15 million to other people.
Hey, Merry Christmas. These seminars are expensive, aren't they, Pace?
They sure are. They sure are. And so here's what happened with Jamil and I. During that time, Jamil essentially came to me and said, let me help you dig out of this hole by helping you do a lot more real estate. And so we started collaborating. Even though Jamil and I we compete on the same deals, Ron. We don't actually own a real estate business together. We compete on the same exact deals. And so for years, Jamil and I did hundreds of transactions, made millions of dollars together, but we were chasing a lot of the same deals. Now, how we got the TV show is something pretty special. So Jamil and I are now kind of well known in Arizona because we would collaborate on stuff, and we'd go to meetups and we'd go to events and we'd show up together, and people are like, man, these are two guys competing against each other but are helping each other out. And it was a beautiful thing, and we created an atmosphere and an environment in Arizona that other people started doing the same thing. Well, one day somebody came to us and said, you guys need to take this message on the road. So in 2018, Jamil and I spent about $180,000 of our own money flying around the country doing free meetups and just meeting people and showing them what collaboration in real estate really could do for you. And we gained a lot of traction. We called it Pace in America, or Pace and Jamil Do America was the name of our tour.
Cute.
Yeah. And we're on that tour right now, Ron. Here we are, 2022. We are on that tour right now. Jamil and I are both staring out at the Austin skyline. We were in Boise on Monday. We were in Houston on Wednesday, Austin last night, and Dallas tonight. And all we do is we just go around and we tell people, you need somebody to collaborate with. You need to go and learn from the right people. We have nothing to sell. We leave that to, other people. And we say, go listen to Ron, go listen to these people, but you need somebody to collaborate with. And so one year in 2020, we get home from a really long surge of these back-to-back meetings. And I decide I'm going to go buy a flip in my for these 3 or 4 days we're off before we go back on the road. And I'm getting a deal from a wholesaler. Wholesaler's sending me a deal. He goes, hey, if you can commit to 200,000, deal's yours. I go, great. Send me the contract at 200,000. He comes back 5 minutes later, Ron, and he says, hey, I've got somebody else at 205. I go, come on, man. You just told me 200,000. All right, great. I'll be at 205. And this is, don't play this game with me, man. Don't play this game with me. Comes back 5 minutes later. Hey, man, this guy's bumping back up to 210. I'm like, what the heck? So what do? I text my buddy Jamil. I go, hey, is this freaking guy out to lunch? He keeps bidding me up. And Jamil goes, I'm the other guy. They're bidding you. So Ron, that's the nature of mine and Jamil's relationship is that I go, look, let's just tell this wholesaler that we're going to buy the deal together. And then that way he doesn't feel pinched to make a decision on who he sells it to. And so Jamil and I buy this flip together, which is pretty rare. Usually we're kind of assigning him to each other. And we go and make a YouTube video about why we collaborate and how it's changed our lives together and how this brotherhood that we could be competing has been the greatest relationship in our lives. And a television network executive picks that YouTube video up, falls in love with the spirit of collaboration over competition. And we get a call from A&E, the head executive at A&E. They skipped the sizzle reel. They skipped the pilot. We didn't have to have a pilot. They just said, we're going straight to series. We love what you guys are all about. And, maybe there's some questions in here, so I'll skip to the very end. But Jamil and I now are the #1 television show on A&E, a national #1 show.
Really?
We've signed a contract for 6 years. They're already talking about spin-off shows and doing all sorts of stuff.
No kidding.
And all of that came from getting into real estate and helping each other rather than looking at each other as competition.
All right. Well, I'm going to come back to the show.
Yes.
All right. First, I'm not through with you guys and your beginnings. Jamil, he's been talking for an hour. It's your turn here for a minute. What does your business look like today? Your real estate business? Are you strictly wholesaling? Are you doing any terms deals? Rehabbing what?
So we are rehabbing. Obviously, the television show is a fix and flip show, so we've got active fix and flips going, but we mainly wholesale. So I don't hold a lot. We're transactional. I've done over 5,000 wholesale deals since starting the real estate company in Arizona in 2016, Key Glee. For those of you that are familiar with the company, we are now nationally franchised. So I'm in 110 markets. That's how many franchises we have operating around the country. And again, I show people our systems. They come in, they become Keegley franchises, and we grow and build businesses together. And it's an incredible operation. If you see it today, it's just phenomenal.
So when you wholesale these houses, you obviously wholesale them in multiple cities.
Correct.
Not where you live. And some maybe where you live. So I want to know, and they want to know, everybody watching, how do you run an operation like that without actually going out and visiting the house? And because most of your wholesale deals are all online, right? Buy them online, sell them online.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, doing this business virtually is incredibly easy, but you have to have the right systems in place. You have to understand what you're doing. Yeah. So first and foremost, my team, our corporate store is mainly centralized in Phoenix, Arizona. And we'll operate our corporate store in Texas. We have a corporate store in Florida. Our franchises, they tend to be local in the markets that they're in.
Right.
But the ones that we're running virtually, our reps are mainly, and this is how we do the majority of our lead generation, our leads are coming from agent relationships. And so a little different from the direct-to-seller approach where you send out a postcard or you put some marketing, on television or pay-per-click, whatever your means might be. For us, we understand that there's thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of active real estate agents out there who come across these opportunities that are in distress, and they really don't know what to do with them. These houses are not financeable. The condition that they're in are so distressed, hoarder houses or really run down probate deals. These are typically lower end deals. They don't excite the agent because, again, they've got to go through all of this work. They can't properly even show this house because it's in such terrible condition. It's a hazard.
Well, they show it to investors, though. Most of them have a whole list of investors they sell to.
They do, but never underestimate the power of people's laziness. And so
I will never underestimate that.
The thing that we've done really well at Keegley is our systems allow us a process of follow-ups where we're constantly following up with real estate agents that are on these appointments, talking to these sellers. And then they just bring us the opportunity because we just show up.
So you're telling me you get deals are they listed yet when you get them or not?
Nope. We get them before they get the
pre-listed. All right. So that's why there aren't investors fighting over them out there paying ridiculous prices.
Exactly.
And you guys are partially to blame for this crazy market we're in, on your TV shows, you're attracting people into the industry. I'm paying way too much for houses, but God bless them. So it's a great time to wholesale. I'll tell you that. So I want to do some numbers with you. Sure. What's your average profit on a wholesale deal, give or take?
Today it's a little over 20,000.
Okay. Average ARV on a house that you wholesale.
The average ARV on a house we're wholesaling these days is about $600,000.
Wow. Then you're working in the higher price markets. Okay. So is that true for all your franchises or just where you're at?
Just where I'm at.
Okay.
In Florida, our average ARV is in the threes.
Right.
In Texas, our average ARV is in the 3s and 4s. Phoenix has bumped up quite dramatically over the last couple of years.
Yeah. So is Florida. I live in Florida. I mean, it's just getting nuts down here.
It is
because everybody in New York's moving down here for the most part.
Yes,
which I certainly can't blame them any. All right, so when you do these wholesale deals, I'll bet you that by this time you've already looked back and asked yourself, "Geez, what if I'd have kept a bunch of these houses
every day?
I'm getting a check every day." Okay,
every day, Ron.
I have this conversation with wholesalers all the time because I used to be one as well. I mean, I teach the opposite of that, by the way. I teach against wholesaling for your information, even though that's how I did my first deal and many deals thereafter, just because of that reason. Get a check, pay maximum taxes, got to go keep doing it and so forth. Unlike what Pace just did with this those massive apartment complex, that's called residual income. So do you do any terms deals, Jamil?
I have done some terms deals in the past. It's not my forte. My brother and best friend here, Pace, is an incredibly gifted creative finance individual. And so anytime I come across a deal like that, I'm happy to do my wholesale thing and assign it right over to my friend so he can hold it. But
okay.
And he does. It's a great relationship because I can be out there finding opportunities and he's happy to take them. So
Pace, then your main mindset is holding the properties?
I'd say 85% of what I do is holding them. We also fix and flip local in Arizona. Not a lot, probably 40 houses a year. And there's a reason for that. One, we enjoy doing it. It's fun. Two, we make nice little chunks of money and we roll those into our rentals. And also we learned that when we are actively buying in town, other wholesalers that send us deals, they know that we're buyers. And so we get to look at a lot more deals instead of, maybe a wholesale situation. So, and then we wholesale every once in a while.
So what's your average profit on a fix and flip?
Our average profit on a fix and flip is about 38 grand right now.
Okay, and what's the ARV on that one? That average?
Our average is somewhere around 350 to 450 is where we stay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm always shooting for about a 10% of my sales price is my net profit.
All right. I won't do one for 10%. I'll let you do it.
We used to not. But the market's really skinny right now. You know, it used to be 20%, but it's just those deals aren't out there. We get deals all the time. We make 100 grand. We got a deal right now we're going to make $200,000 on, but those are pretty slim, you know. They come across once every 20 houses. They're
a bonus, not a business.
There you go.
Yeah. Of course, it's a higher price house as well, I assume.
It is, yeah.
Right. All right.
That's all for this edition of the Mentor Podcast. To connect with Ron and learn how you can attain financial freedom, as well as up-to-date strategies to grow and protect your wealth based on today's discussion, go to www.connectwiththementor.com.